Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, a show that will help you transform your marketing from mere messaging to programs that break the rules and make a difference. Join the movement today and learn non-traditional techniques that give you an edge. Now, here's your Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
My guest today is Suzanne Copeland, the Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer of Sterling National Bank. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thanks, Drew. Great to be here.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you because, in the world when people start to think about bank marketing, they don't necessarily think about renegades and other things. And I know you to be that type of person. So I'm excited for you to share some of your wisdom, a hard-earned wisdom over the last few years. But before we get started, I think it's helpful to sort of go back to how'd you get to where you are and describe your career path a little bit.
Sure. I'd be glad to do that. It's interesting. I didn't necessarily set out to be in banking per se. Some people start out their careers in financial services, and I really didn't. It's just a place that I ended up. I actually started my career in the advertising agency side. I got out of college and I was an art director. And so I think that's a good background to have. It definitely was not my strongest skill set. And so, I kind of quickly moved to the dark side, away from actually executing the creative. And I had an opportunity, my first sort of bigger corporate leadership job. I was in a medical device manufacturer, and then a bank opportunity in my town opened up, great brand. And so that's really where I got into banking, and that was back in Memphis, Tennessee. And I spent quite a bit of time there. And then I was really ready for some new challenges, and this opportunity presented itself to come to Sterling, which was then Provident, and really build a marketing discipline. And I was very excited about the opportunity to build. So that's what drew me to move from Memphis, Tennessee to suburban New York and come here.
Very interesting. So my experience with former agency people is either they make the best clients or they make the worst clients. And I'm curious, and there's reasons for both. I'm curious how being an art director and having worked on the agency side did inform your approach to dealing with agency partners once you left that side.
Yeah, and so this is what they tell me, and I think they're telling me the truth, that actually I'm easier to work with. I may be more demanding, but I also understand how. And so when I give feedback, I'm understanding what it is they need from me to move forward. So I'm not the person that says, yeah, not enough pizzazz, what else you got? I don't do that. And I know I've been the recipient of that. So
right. Yeah.
And so I don't do that. So I think, whether I am very demanding, but I think the respect is there simply because I also know where they're coming from, and I help them get there, as opposed to just fold my arms and say, what else can you do for me?
Well, that's an interesting and enlightened perspective, I have to add. And I wanted to ask you, do you think about your personal brand at all? And if you did have a personal brand, how would you describe your brand?
I do think personal brand is really important. I think that it's like anything else. You're interacting with people, and how you're coming across and what you're like, it definitely influences the outcome of that relationship. So I do think about that. I'd like to think that my brand was smart, creative, and fun. I'd like to think that people think I know what I'm doing, and then that I have unique perspectives and can have unique problem-solving skills, but that I'm fun. While I've got some serious perspectives, that I'm still a cool person to be around.
There you go. So you're still that's the agency part of you left in there. Is that?
Yeah, that and the shoes. I think the platform stiletto probably the other piece of the picture there, a brand icon for me.
I see. So there we go. So yes, fun but with heels. There you go. Love it. So we bring our fun, smart creativeness to banking, which is not necessarily famous for innovative marketing. Let's talk a little bit. Do you see banking as a unique marketing challenge?
It does come with some unique challenges. I think it has some great opportunities associated with it as well. Way back, banks were some of the first companies that actually had in their possession that big data that everyone talks about. It was necessary to do the job, to do the business of banking. So one of the earlier adopters, I think, to tapping into that information and leveraging it for marketing is banks. I mean, I got a lot of great direct marketing experience out of working for a bank. I think some of the stronger challenges are that it is very much kind of a commodity marketplace. I think it's hard to say you're really doing something that different. I mean, being an intermediary for funds, well, there are plenty of companies that do that. Everybody touts that their relationship is better. It's kind of hard to really tease that out to some specifics and say exactly, well, how much better and what about that is better. So I think that's the challenge, is differentiation. And then I think the competitive marketplace is also extremely strong in banking. There are a lot of non-bank competitors, and they're making great strides with regard to innovation, which is something that the clients are looking for. So that's a challenge too.
So perfect setup for now. Let's talk about Sterling and how did you and how have you differentiated Sterling from other brands?
Well, our business model is probably the stronger driver of what the differentiation is. We're set up with dedicated commercial teams. So our key target is the commercial middle market client. And this is a business that's pretty big, that's established, but they're not large, global corporations. So that having that one-stop shopping, dedicated person that you can go to work with on your finances is important. You have to have a big enough organization that can meet your credit needs, that has the sophistication on the deposit side and cash management. But at the same time, you don't want to be at a huge organization that you're going to have to find those services on your own throughout their different silos. We're able to provide sort of that perfect blend. So then you have to communicate that, right? So, yeah. So,
yeah.
So has anybody know that? Well, one of the things that we did early on when I came to the organization, I brought a content marketing strategy in. And I think that is a really effective way with this audience. So we publish Connect Magazine, been publishing it for over 7 years now. And a key feature of that is that we do client profiles. So we have a cover story with a client. That client talks about their business, so it's a great value to them. But dovetailed with that, they do sprinkle in where we have helped them with that business, where we have helped them establish the credit necessary to move into new markets, or expand their manufacturing, or just manage their cash flows better so they're more profitable.
I think it's so fun, and I would argue renegade today to zig when everybody's zagging. And what everybody, the trend is move out of print, get it into digital. Why would you go back to a magazine, which feels so, 1980s, when everybody's touting digital as the only way to connect and do content marketing?
Well, I think the digital is certainly a piece of it, and we do present. For the first time here more recently, I launched a new website, and one of the key features of that was taking all the content from the publication and putting it on the website and making it searchable. So we have a huge database of information for businesses on how to run their business better. So we definitely haven't left the digital behind, but I still think because everyone's moved, I think the zigging instead of zagging is to your benefit when then you can stand out. So I still, hear the feedback that now what people get in their mail, instead of being overwhelmed and they throw most of it out, it's sort of a novelty that you'd actually get something in the mail, and a quality piece too. I mean, it's a beautifully produced magazine. It's a small magazine, but it's something that you would stop and take a few minutes to look at.
And I bet your customers love seeing their stories in print as opposed to on digital, and being able to leave it on the desk and the waiting desk when people come to see them. Oh, look, that makes them more impressive and more prestigious.
That's absolutely correct. Plus, we go the extra mile, and we provide a framed article for those clients, and they display those in their main conference rooms. I mean, those are not, hidden away in a copier. They're putting it out for others to see because it is in print, because it does have that quality. It's an attractive piece of art that they can use.
And interesting also to me that, so much of the marketing world focuses on acquisition. And this program, Connect, seems very much about acquisition through retention. In other words, making your customers look good, focusing on them, and in the process, maybe some customers will come along. Is that a fair characterization of that approach?
Yeah, I think it is fair. Although I would say that the commercial middle market target, like a lot of the B2B type targets, have a longer sales cycle. So you're not just going to send out a piece of mail, no matter what it is, and then instantly buy here, and they call and order it. So there is some building with regard to the prospects that we send. Most of the quantity, quite frankly, goes to prospects. So those that are not our clients today. So that's helping us build brand. But yet at the same time, it is going to our clients. And you're absolutely right. It is also, creating, brand ambassadors through our, B2B clients through a way to showcase them. So I think that it works on all those planes.
That's really, really interesting. And we're going to take a quick break here while we go to our sponsor. And when we come back, Susan's going to talk about the future in terms of what CMOs are facing, some of the challenges, how they deal with data versus idea, and some suggestions on how to be a better marketer.
Renegade Thinkers Unite is brought to you by Social Media Explorer, the website that explores the world of social media from the inside out. Great advice from today's leading social media columnists and experts at socialmediaexplorer.com. That's socialmediaexplorer.com.
Okay, we're back. So really interesting talking about making your customers look good and getting into acquisition. I'd love to get some of your thoughts on what's the biggest challenge that you're facing and other marketers are facing right now? I mean, what are you thinking about in terms of how to crack this marketing puzzle?
Well, I think there's a couple of different challenges that we're facing. One, I think that we share with almost any organization, and then one that I think is more unique to our business model. So the one that I think we share with all organizations is just this channel proliferation. I mean, there are just so many places to be, and I am getting, people are reaching out to me from various providers, and it's just almost endless, the different choices that I could be making, the things that I could be investing in. So I think that's dizzying. Yeah. And I think that that's a huge challenge, because I think that everybody is let's make this marketing function as efficient as possible, spend the fewest number of dollars, have, them go to the exact perfect ways, and we get the exact results we want. And with the more choices, that makes it much more difficult. The challenge that I think is unique to our business model is that because we have these dedicated commercial teams, they tend to have a particular type of client base. So as you might imagine, if you become a specialist in working with certain types of middle market clients, well, you're going to get referred more clients just like that, and you're going to kind of build a business out of working with certain types of businesses. Well, now you have a very specific approach. So I've got a lot of different salespeople with a very specific approach. Well, it's hard to be really efficient with that. I can't give everybody a cookie cutter same thing, because they're right if they come back and say, yeah, but that's not what I'm doing. That's not what I'm talking about. You're not hitting on the really important points that particular client needs. So for us, the challenge is, how do you have a really lean organization? How do you create some level of consistency and some configurability so that you can address that, but not, be spending a lot of money and needing a lot of hours of labor to execute it?
And how do you do that?
I don't think I have quite all the answers yet, but what I do try to do is this philosophy that I've always tried to employ, is to I would call it like build little marketing machines, like find a channel that you're going to work in and really think about it holistically. So don't think about, well, this one person asked me for something specific there, I'm going to do that specific thing and I'm done. I always think about, well, what's the common thread? How can I maybe build a program that they can configure for their use, but then I can configure it different ways for other people. Right. Complex direct marketing programs, even on the retail side, kind of come from that. Think about how you can have a program that has a lot of different targets, that has some variable places in it, as opposed to a direct marketing campaign singular to that specific target, and then you have to do it all over again a different way every time there's a new target. And I just apply that same thinking even to sales collateral and to the digital channel and to anything else that we might do to support our sales force in acquiring and retaining clients.
So it sounds like the key message I heard was avoid the one-off, avoid the thing that, and this is talked about a lot in content marketing, and this podcast is an example. The podcast, we do this, then we also have an article that will come out of it. So it's one thing, multiple iterations, and it sounds like you've embraced that across all your channels.
Absolutely. That is absolutely it. Build it once, deploy it many, many different ways.
Interesting. Well, that I think is a key insight for anybody approaching content marketing, but it sounds like it's anybody approaching any kind of marketing these days. I want to go back to the comment you meant about channel proliferation, because I've heard that issue a lot. And I was at an agency meeting recently where there literally were like 10 different partners representing the and certainly the challenge of getting those partners to work together is an interesting one. But there's just cutting through the channels and understanding what expertise you need to have in-house versus out-house, if you will, that you can. And so I'm curious, when you look at it today with all these channels, how much of that expertise do you feel like you need in-house, and even to be able to evaluate whether you should be doing programmatic versus, and how much you should be spending on SEM and that. How much in-house do you need today?
Well, it is a challenge when you're in a small organization with a very lean team. So I do think we have to look to some of our partners to help us with that thinking. The other thing, though, I think that we can do ourselves is just be maniacal about focusing on our business strategy, really understanding what is it this company is doing, so that it's very quick to triage. Is what I'm hearing something that looks like a fit for that, or does it sound cool, but the truth of the matter is it's not a fit for that, and it's easy to kind of set that one aside.
Right. That makes real sense, is get that strategy. And that reminds me, I want to go back a little bit, step back, because we didn't really talk about one of the more remarkable things of your stay with the bank, is that you started at Providence and then it became Sterling, and you survived the merger, if you will, and talk about the rebranding and that process and some of the things that you learned as a result from going from this one name to the other, and how you even made that decision.
Sure. That was really a lot of what has happened over the last several years. And, it's funny. It's like a lot of things, I guess, it's kind of traumatic when you go through it, and then you kind of get over it and you look back and you're like, oh yeah, I guess we did do that. Acquisition has been a major way that we've grown. And we had an issue with the Provident name because it was not something we could use in New Jersey. And actually there was brand confusion even in New York City, which we wanted to move into there because the Provident Bank brand out of New Jersey already had claim to it in the state of New Jersey and was already doing business in the city. So we knew we had to change. So that was our initial motivation. But then it's like, what are we going to change it to? So it's cheaper if in your acquisition you can purchase a company that has a name that the Sterling name was something that we could use, and it was a good name. Mm-hmm. I actually had one of the other acquisitions was Gotham Bank, and I rejected that name. I did not like it.
Well, the Batman fans are going to be very disappointed in you.
I know, but that's the first thing anybody thinks about. And I also thought it was the for me, even out of the Batman, it was everything that was the worst of what New York City had to offer. So I just did not think that was the right thing to hook it on. But Sterling's a good name. So it definitely was challenging. Obviously, we still have some residual, mourning, if you will, in the Hudson Valley markets from clients that we stripped them away, the Provident Bank name. But I was very gratified that the feedback that I got, like from other colleagues and people in the community, thought we did it brilliantly and thought that it was like flipping a light switch. And one day it was one thing and one day it was the other. I was like, wow, it was not that way for me, but I am so glad it was that way for you.
Renegade Thinkers Unite is brought to you by Social Media Explorer, the website that explores the world of social media from the inside out. Great advice from today's leading social media columnists and experts at socialmediaexplorer.com. That's socialmediaexplorer.com.
And how did you how were you able to orchestrate flipping the light switch like that?
Well, there were just a lot of moving parts, and I definitely had a lot of vendor support. You asked about what do you do internally and what do you do externally, and that was something I definitely worked with an external partner on developing it. And then we just leveraged a lot of vendors to make it happen. I have to say, good partners within the organization, the folks in facilities and in other areas of the bank operations were, very participatory and embraced the activities that they had to do to help us unearth where are these places where we're displaying our brand that maybe I didn't even know about. So I thought the team worked really well together, and it was just all part of the conversion of the company, which is another thing. We did that while we were merging. This was not a separate branding issue, which even further compounded it, because you're literally working with a whole team of people, some of which, quite frankly, won't be there for the outcome. So that was a unique challenge.
That must have tested some of your managerial and leadership skills along the way there.
And my patience.
That too. So we talked a little bit about the pace of change that CMOs are facing. One of the big conversations is around big data versus big idea. There's a lot. It feels like the ship is definitely leaning in the big data world versus the big idea. Where are you in the balance right now in terms of your use of data and how is there any opportunity to use that data to help tell your story better?
Well, I'm not sure about the storytelling with regard to the data. I see them as you need both. I've just always thought about it that way. So the more and better data that you have, the more discrete your activities can be toward changing particular behavior. So obviously you're far better off if you know a particular target, what exactly they're doing, what exactly they're thinking, where are they consuming media. This helps you dive that message in. But I tell you, I guess I'm more of a big idea person, because I still think if you can get in front of the absolute right person at the right time and say the wrong thing and it still doesn't work. Whereas you can get mostly the right person and say a really great thing, and you know what, it might still work okay.
Right. Yeah. No, that's so interesting. More about message and target. Are there any brands out there in your category or beyond your category that you go, wow, I admire what they do?
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that's just a personal passion of mine in the more recent times is about women in the workforce and really helping to bring women up in their level of position within organizations. I feel that I've been fortunate, and I've taken some steps to give back. I launched the Women's Initiative here at Sterling. It's been a great program, very rewarding, and so this has caused me to kind of go out and look at some of that kind of activity out in the marketplace. And one of the organizations that bubbled up with regard to branding was Catalyst. They're pretty targeted to working with organizations to help improve their inclusion strategies with regard to females. But I've been pretty impressed with the communication programs they do, the kind of the content that they're driving. I've found that it's very much in alignment with their message and their mission, and I think they're doing a good job with it.
Interesting. Tell me a little bit more about the Women Initiative that you've done at the bank.
Sure. So this is a personal passion of mine. I brought this whole concept to the organization. They basically kind of let me run with it. And what it is there's a number of ways that you can, improve the workforce for women. But what I focus on specifically, what I care about, is personal and professional development training. So what I put together is a program where there's certainly a networking and an interaction element to it, but what we're delivering is topics that are important in helping women be stronger within the organization. So each quarter I do a different topic. I present a topic overview. The next month I do a panel discussion with senior women on the topic. And then the third month I have an in-person, what I call a mini conference. It's 2 hours long. Have an outside speaker, and then do small group workshops. So the kinds of topics that we cover. Back in the first quarter, we did executive presence. You talked about your personal brand earlier in our conversation, and that definitely dovetails with that. And these are very specific tips, things to do in meetings, things to do when you're presenting, things that you need to improve your skills in. The second quarter, we did moving your career up to the next level. What do you have to do that? What is that really all about? What steps can you take? And the one we just finished was leadership lessons from extreme environments. And this was leadership lessons that come out of climbing Mount Everest and crossing the North and South Pole. Interesting, the analogies there between what it takes to do that and the leadership skills that you need in an organization. So it's been fun.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like a terrific program. So we're coming to the end, and I'm curious if you have some advice for, obviously you have some great advice for women in your organization, but as we look broader to the senior marketing community, in terms of some of the most profound lessons that you've learned of late, if you could offer maybe 2 do's, things that CMOs definitely should do that maybe not be on their list, and 1 don't.
Sure. The thing that's coming to me that I think is the most important thing for marketers is you really have to know your industry. The marketing skills themselves are transferable, and some people move from industry to industry, and I think that that's great. Wherever you are, you really need to know, how does this business run? How does this business make money? And what do the activities that you are driving in marketing, how does that translate into making money for the organization? Many times there's just a disconnect there. And I just think it's hard to make good marketing decisions if you don't know what makes the business run. Then another do, I think, is focus. I think, you've got to just have a focused plan. Like we talked about that channel proliferation, I think it's so easy to get distracted by the shiny object and start following through on tactics and getting lost in the weeds. I think that, having a focus, so the business, and just, every year having these key initiatives, and you just keep building on that. Build those little machines that I talked about so they start to run kind of a little bit more efficiently. It's easier to make those work, and then layer on new initiatives. That's where the work is, when you have to build one of those from scratch. So I would say focus is another do. In terms of don't, I think that the biggest don't for me is kind of getting cordoned off into the marketing world. I think you've got to be able to have relationships beyond that in the organization, and really understand what other parts of the organization are doing, and not just kind of like, this is the marketing domain, and that's just the only place that I stay.
Nice. So we've got to follow the money. 2, we have to focus our marketing, because we can't do everything. And 3, avoid being a silo. It's really about getting marketing all the way through, almost permeating the organization. I think that's such great advice. Suzanne, it's been wonderful talking to you and having you on as a guest on Renegade Thinkers Unite. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Drew. It's been fun.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.